Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk about William Shatner, everybody's favorite starship captain. Well, everybody except people who think of Picard or Cisco or Janeway or Archer or, for some reason, Lorca or any other captain as their favorite captain. Why am I talking about William Shatner? Well, yes, he's going to space, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the fact that a few weeks ago, I got into sort of a back and forth with him on Twitter, which, by the way, is not the first time I've had a back and forth with William Shatner on Twitter, but this time he really got my goat because I guess someone had asked him about George Takei, which someone always does. And, you know, as far as that whole conflict goes, I'm Team Takei because I really think Shatner's an ass. And until recently, that was mostly because I just believed George. And I mostly believed George because I have a little bit of knowledge of how the system in general worked in TV and film back in the 60s. There were leading men. I mean, we still sort of have that, but back then it was a big thing. You know, you were the leading men, like you were the bee's knees, you know, and they didn't really have ensemble casts the way they do now. So it totally fits that Shatner, who was, you know, first on the call sheet, whose name was at the top of the credits, had a bit of an ego because he was the shit, as it were. And back in old Hollywood, that's how the people who were the shit often behaved. And when I say they were the shit, they were, you know, the big star. They were the sort of planet that the moon revolved around on set, depending, you know, from film to film and show to show. They were the planet. Everything else was the moon that orbited around them, or they were the sun, and everything else was the planet that revolved around them. So that's just the way it was. And a lot of those people took full advantage of it. And anybody whose name was lower on the call sheet, even like a co-star, was always treated like a second banana, and then, you know, third, fourth, fifth banana. And that's the story that George Takei, and by the way, the other original series main cast, tells about Shatner. So I always sort of believed George and the other cast members anyway, because there were more of them, and they were sort of telling the same story. And, you know, you could see in the way Shatner carried himself in the show and in the movies that he was kind of, you know, a little bit full of himself. But it seems like recently, you know, as he gets older, he's 90 now, he seems to have run out of give a shit. And so he's even more like bold about his disdain for the other cast members, particularly George. And part of that's got to be that he's tired of being asked about it, you know, because people ask about it because they want dirt, they want juicy goss, as it were. And, you know, they want to make a soundbite sometimes. So he gets asked about it all the time, and it must be aggravating. And of course, from time to time, George will throw a barb out, which is why Shatner sometimes asked about George. And George really shouldn't do that either, but it's just an ongoing thing, and it's kind of regrettable. They're both really old now, and you'd think they would bury that. Anyway, it keeps coming up. So somebody asked Shatner recently something about George this, George that, and he was talking about George, and I happened to see it, and he was just really being very dismissive of George in particular, as well as the main cast besides himself, D. Kelly and Leonard Nimoy. And he's talking about how they were barely ever on set. Now, George was barely ever on set, and he has a lot to say for a guy who was barely ever there and who took off part of the second season to make a movie. And I thought that that was not cool, but what really got my goat was he referred to these cast members as the day players. And he referred to George specifically as a day player. And he did it in a disparaging way. He did it as a knock against them. Because, again, especially in old Hollywood, day playing was a thing. It probably still is, but what William Shatner means when he says a day player is somebody who is very insignificant, somebody who doesn't even have a contract with a studio or a show, because that's what day players were, and they may still be that, but that's what he means by that. And so it's someone that showed up on studio who wasn't under contract generally, who would just sort of sit in a pool of faceless, nameless, may as well be faceless actors and actresses that would be plugged here and there, miss and match. Like, okay, we need a generic cop here. We need a generic secretary there. We need a generic soldier here. We need a generic dancing girl there. And so they would get plug and play action, as it were, from day to day. And they probably got a per diem as a pay. So they were really nobodies in the scheme of things in Hollywood. Like the bottom rung of actors and actresses were these day players, maybe slightly above extras. And for him to call the rest of the main cast that, aside from himself, Dee Kelly and Leonard Nimoy, it was really shitty, because that's not what they were. They were not day players. They may not have spent much more time on set than you would expect a day player to spend on set. But the fact of the matter is, as far as I know, they were contracted to play a specific character repeatedly, and nobody else, anywhere else, except for when George made this movie, over a period of time, a specific period of time, or a specific number of episodes at once. So they weren't day players. They were part of the main cast of a TV show. So it was just his little way of knocking them, to say, oh, the day players. And he went so far as to throw Dee Kelly under the bus by saying that Dee would refer to them as the Seven Dwarfs. So, and Dee can't speak for himself and say whether or not that was even true. It doesn't make him look good if it is true. So I didn't think it was cool of Shatner to do that. So, I called him out on it, and I said, George was in 52 episodes or whatever it was. You were in 69. Like, your part was certainly bigger than his, but if it takes a couple of days to shoot an episode, he was on set X number of days, you were on set X more number of days. It's a few times more, maybe, but not hundreds of times. Like, what? Why are you referring to them so disparagingly? And I guess he took issue with my math, or took issue with my interpretation of the situation, and tried to take me to school. So we had a few back and forth goes at each other, and I'm going to put the tweets up so you can see them, and I'll read them to you. The first thing I said to him was, at George Takei was in 52 episodes, you were in 79. I said 69 a minute ago, it was 79. If it takes 60 days to shoot one's part in 52 episodes, which I'm taking from Shatner, he said that during the whole series, George probably wasn't on set more than 60 days. And given he was in 52 episodes, I said, if it takes 60 days to shoot one's part in 52 episodes, that's 1.15 days per episode. If your part was 3 times his, that's 3.45 days per episode, or 272 days. That's 4 times more on set time, sure, but it's not 400 times more. And then I said, humility, it's a thing. Because I think he needs to have a little humility. He has zero humility. And like I said, I think maybe he's just run out of give a shit at this point in his life. But anyway, his reply to that was, George was in 52 episodes where he was on set 1, sometimes 2 days of the shoot. 52 episodes times 1 day equals 52 days. And then bump it up to 60 or so, #math. So he basically said the same thing that I just said, but I was trying to explain to him that those things are not as far apart as he thinks they are. So I wasn't really sure why he responded exactly that way, because I'd already covered that. But anyway, what I said at that point was, using your number to do that math, I got 1.15 days per, or 1 to 2 days of the shoot. As you said, a 50-minute show shoots in what, 5 days, 6? Didn't I say your set time was maybe 4 times more? Well, I'm sorry you keep being asked about it. Guess I wish you just ignored it even more than you do. And that goes to what I was saying before. He's probably asked about it a lot. And it's unfortunate that he's asked about it a lot, because at this point he's got to be tired of it, and it just keeps the shitstorm going, that either of them are asked about it. And I said, I was trying to back out of it and trying to resolve it, and well, not resolve it, but trying to end the conversation, I said, I guess I wish you just ignored it more than you do, because I'm sure he ignores it somewhat. I'm sure we don't hear, a response every time somebody asks him. I'm sure he blows off a lot of it and doesn't engage with it. But I don't know. I guess I wish he was doing that more. Anyway, that wasn't good enough for him. He couldn't let it go. So he said to me, Sporto with the addled brain. I'm not sure what a Sporto is, but he called me Sporto with the addled brain. If he was on set one day of the shoot of each episode, at times maybe 2 days for a couple episodes, then the math is 52 episodes times 1 day, which equals 52 days. I was being generous to suggest that 8 episodes he was on set for 2 days equals 60 days. So again, he repeated the same thing. So I just said to him, addled brain? No, I took my meds today, meaning sometimes I forget, but today I didn't forget. And then I said, 60, 52, whatevs. Look, when you call multiple actors who had one specific regular role in 2/3 of a series or more, day players, who are people hired day to day for different parts that have no contract, it comes off Leadzilla-ish. Okay? Okay. My point was that when he does stuff like that, he lends credence to the things that were said about him, as opposed to disproving those things. So, if your first point was George doesn't know what he's talking about, he wasn't there that often, so I don't know where he gets off saying all these things that he says, but then you turn around and friggin' prove that you're an ass by referring to them in a disparaging manner. It's like, what are you doing? And of course, I was interacting with other people as well at the same time, and they would say stuff like, oh, leave him alone. And I would say, well, no, what he's doing proves the stuff they said about him more than it disproves it. I'm trying to make him understand that it's not accomplishing what he thinks it's accomplishing to try to make it look like the things that they say about him don't have any merit because, well, they weren't there. And why weren't there? Oh, because they were the peons. They were the little day players. Like, you're totally proving the fact that you're an arrogant ass that mistreated people because you thought of them as less than. So it's like, what are you doing? Anyway, I just wanted to report on my interactions with him because the thing keeps coming up about him and George, and he's always in the news, especially now that he's going to space, which is probably going to boost his ego even more, and he'll be even more insufferable. But yeah, the other development in this story is that he blocked me. He blocked me on Twitter, and we've tangled before because he has an opinion about people on the autism spectrum, which I don't think is great. I think his outlook is kind of poor on that. And my son is on the spectrum. He has Asperger's. So we've sort of tangled on other subjects in the past as well as this subject now. So I think he just kind of got tired of me and blocked me, which is hilarious because it just shows that he can't handle criticism. I didn't swear at him. I didn't call him any names other than Leadzilla-ish. I didn't, rant and rave. I wasn't vulgar, but he blocked me. Why? Because he knew I was right and he didn't want to hear it. So, and I know that's like the go-to that everybody assumes is the case when someone blocks them, but what else could it be? I don't block people on anything unless they're really abusive and they cross serious lines. This was just me giving him what for, and I think he realized I was right, or part of him did, and he didn't want to hear it anymore. So there you go, blocked by William Shatner on the Twitter. On 2 accounts, by the way. I must not have had all these conversations with him from the same account. So he got tired of me, I guess, on 2 fronts because I'm blocked by him on 2 accounts. One is, by the way, the Positronic, if you couldn't tell from the pictures, the Positronic Hypersonic account. Another one that I have is sort of for my political tweeting. But yeah, I'm blocked on both of those by the Shatner. I've been blocked by a few celebrities. Rhode Island's own James Woods has blocked me on the Twitter for the same reason. He can't handle it when I tell him he's a whole sign. And I was blocked by Gene Simmons at one point, but he unblocked me after I begged him nicely from a different account. again for the same reason, because I called him on his bullshit. But I won't get into that. Anyway, that's my William Shatner Twitter story. I don't expect there to be any further developments, seeing as I'm blocked. But I do have a third Twitter account, so who knows? There might be. In any case, I'll be back with any more interesting developments in this or any other sci-fi related story. Until then, my friends, I wish you all peace and long life.